All right, hi everyone, thanks for joining. Today we're talking about streamlining brief advice, tech tools for consistency and speed. I'm Lindsay Bramble, and I am the Deputy Director for Remote Services at the Maryland Center for Legal Assistance. I'll talk a little bit more about what the Maryland Center for Legal Assistance is and what we do. But to tell you a little bit about the presentation today, we're going to be talking about how to serve more people faster without staff burnout or reducing quality. Everything we're talking about today grew out of our staff or those we were serving saying this isn't working and us trying to figure out how to fix it. And that's all been possible because of Russ.
Hi, I'm Russ Bloomquist from Maryland Legal Aid. And my job really is to just translate user experiences and bottlenecks and things that are occurring within our system into really streamlined workflows. And MCLA accounts for about a third of my project times at Legal Aid. And the app itself does a lot of different things, like it does reporting, and it does billing, and it can send text messages and surveys. But today we're really just going to focus on the referral tab and the link manager.
So the Maryland Center for Legal Assistance is a subsidiary of Maryland Legal Aid. This is our mission statement up here. We expand access to justice by providing free, compassionate, innovative, and high-quality legal services through court help centers, empowering self-represented litigants to understand and navigate the legal process. We have 11 help centers across the state. Currently 67 employees, and in calendar year 2025, we had 179,118 interactions, so we're very high volume. We're not really a traditional legal services organization in that we do entirely brief advice, so we don't have any sort of lasting client relationships. Everything we do is brief advice, even though we are primarily attorneys, so it's not just legal information, it is legal advice. We started in 2009 with one location in a small courthouse in Glen Burnie in Maryland, if you're familiar, with 2 or 3 employees, and we've really grown over time, rapidly growing each year because the demand has been so high. So then another big change was in 2017 is when we had been Maryland Legal Aid. We split and became the Maryland Center for Legal Assistance for 2 reasons there. We're solely funded by this contract with the Maryland court system. We don't receive any LSC funding, which means we don't really have any barriers to assistance. We kind of help anyone. And we also, as we were growing, we couldn't really be using Maryland Legal Aid's like case management systems anymore because, sorry, there's
maybe this
echo, maybe? Couldn't really be using Maryland Legal Aid's case management systems anymore because we didn't want to be creating conflicts since we were helping so many people, and we do help on both sides of cases sometimes. We have a sort of a relaxed conflict rule there. It was just sort of easier to separate. We became the subsidiary of Maryland Legal Aid. In 2017, that same year that we became MCLA, the same year I started at MCLA, is also the same year that Russ created the app for us. That's what we call it, the app. It's really just an online website that we use as our internal data management system, and it's now turned into have all these other tools that we use. Before that, we had just been using paper and SurveyMonkey to track all of our data, and as we were just getting bigger and bigger and bigger, that just wasn't sustainable, which is kind of, you'll see as kind of the theme of everything that we've developed has just been, we're getting too busy, this isn't sustainable anymore. So a little bit about the court help centers that I talked about a little. So we're MCLA, but we operate under this contract with the courts to operate the Maryland Court Help Centers. They're essentially self-help centers. It's just, they're called the Maryland Court Help Centers. So they're operated statewide by MCLA under a contract with the Maryland Judiciary, and we have multiple types of services. We have a phone hotline, we have an online chat, we have some video kiosks in the courthouses where people can video chat with us. We have email and walk-in services. So our scope, we have 10 walk-in offices, or 11 walk-in offices in 10 different counties. There's 24 counties in Maryland, including Baltimore City. So those have physical walk-in centers. That's important to note for later when I talk about some access and equity issues. Our scope is huge. We help with pretty much any civil legal issue in the Maryland state courts. As long as you're not a business and as long as you're unrepresented, pretty much we'll help you. Like I said, it's just brief advice. And yeah, we're really, really busy. We also have expanded hours. Our phone and chat is open Monday through Friday from 8:30 a.m. to 8 p.m. So we're very high volume. The way our model works for brief advice is that it is a discrete, brief attorney-client relationship. So someone calls in, someone walks in, we meet with them right away. We have very minimal intake, basically asking county and zip code and case number, and then we help them right away. They do sign or agree verbally to a limited scope agreement, but that just forms an attorney-client relationship for that meeting with them. It doesn't last beyond that, so we have no ongoing clients, no ongoing case files, and that's important for our brief advice service. We can't retain those things. It's going to create conflicts if we do. I can help a landlord that comes in. If they're an individual landlord, my colleague can help a tenant in that case if we don't know that the other person did that. If we're retaining those files and having that in that system, that's not going to be able to work. So it's sort of important to maintain that confidentiality, to not have these ongoing client relationships. We might see that person again. We do often have repeat visitors coming in. We might see them again, but they might see someone else when they come in. There's no lasting client relationship. So each consult stands on its own. About the repeat use is allowed and often encouraged, especially over the phones. That's sometimes part of our model. You can't tell them every single step of their custody case in one call. You might say, all right, here's your first steps, do this, and then give us a call back. But even so, in that case, each consult stands on its own, whether we've talked to the person 1 time, 10 times, 100 times. It's kind of starting fresh each time. This allows us to reach a lot of people, helping people from both sides, kind of having no barriers to entry. But as we've gotten busier and busier, the need is just growing. It's not going down. It's made it hard to continue operating this way. Not kind of starting from scratch each time.
And our build philosophy really is sort of built for the daily work that everyone's doing. We're not sort of developing in a vacuum and saying, here, do it this way. It's how are you doing the job and how can we make it easier for you as part of the process. We identify problems constantly with users. Hey, I'm doing a walk-in. Every time this is the value that I have to put in this field. Is there a way that we can sort of set that as a default or something like that? We design for real-time use. We're constantly evaluating that process too. At least once or twice a year, we'll have sort of an evaluation of our data practices to make sure we're collecting the data that we need only, and nothing else. And it's really context. It's part of our sort of design philosophy is like, the context of a telephone intake is not necessarily the same context as a walk-in. If the litigants in front of you, things are dramatically different versus if you're on the phone. And our goal really at the end of the day is to just make it as easy as possible for our users to enter the data that we need to report on. And even though we've been around, the app's been around for about, 10 years now, it seems like, it's been data-driven from day one. We've always had reporting requirements, and that's really what drives what we collect and how we do it. And our tech stack is a little bit on the older side. We use PHP for our backend, which is, about 70% of the web is written in PHP at this point still. Like if you're going with like the newer, like top 100,000 websites or something that exist, probably drops down to about 60% of it is written in PHP. Our front end is JavaScript and jQuery. I use jQuery mostly because I'm lazy, if you know anything about programming. For front end, we use Bootstrap for our UI. And that, again, is an older framework. It's probably 4 or 5 years old. Everyone wants to use Tailwind now, in case you're curious. For data, standard database, MySQL database, nothing unusual about that. And our app actually works on any real hosting platform. It doesn't require anything special. I'm trying to think of anything else that's important here. All of our texting happens through Twilio. I think that's about it. Oh, so it's really easy to maintain, and it's actually really affordable too, because since it works on basically any web hosting platform, we actually just host this app where we host all of our other websites, so it doesn't even cost us anything extra to host this application.
Yeah, so like I said, and like Russ has mentioned, we use this app that he's built to enter all of our data, and it does a ton of cool things, but we're really talking about two main things today. So sort of at its basis, so this all makes sense in context, is we pull something in and, I'm meeting with a litigant and I can enter an interaction, put in some basic data about that interaction, but it also, the cool things that it can do now too is it's tied to our phone system, our phone hotline. It can pull the phone number directly from that, and I can then pull that out of the app and fill it in. You'll also see you'll see some screenshots later of with the walk-in, they sign in on a front-facing screen, and then you'll see, we can pull that out and enter it in later. So he's sort of built a lot of things right in there. So we've been using that, but then it came to a point, which I've been setting up for, that there's some main reasons that we needed some new technology. So again, this increase in repeat callers, a lot of it is warranted, like I said, but we were also seeing a lot of advice shopping, finding that there's people just calling in about the same issue, wanting a different answer. And the issue with that is that we're so high volume that the high frequency overuse by a few was limiting access for others. So we were hearing from the same people over and over again, asking the same questions, and then hearing from others that they could never get through. Our phone line was always busy. They were unable to get to us. So we wanted to find a way to sort of be able to weed out those that weren't really calling for legitimate reasons so that we could help those that were. There was also some litigant frustration, and we call the people we help litigants since they're not actually clients with any lasting relationship. Litigant frustration, people that were had called yesterday and then they told their whole story and we gave them some advice, and then they needed to check something, follow up with us the next day. They get someone else and we kind of need them to start over with their story. And they say, can't you just check your notes? I told someone this yesterday. No, we can't do that. We don't retain these notes. Well, we retain them, but we didn't give other staff access to it. And then we were relying on memory instead of systems. So in cases like that, sometimes we would message in our group Teams chat and say, hey, I'm talking to this person in this county about this issue. Does anyone remember that? Sometimes it would work, sometimes it wouldn't. We're really busy. Everyone pretty much is on a call or has someone in front of them, which I'm sure a lot of people here experience the same kind of thing. Or so they don't see the message, or if they do, maybe they sort of remember it, but they've helped 40 other people since then, so they don't really remember what they said. Or you're relying on the litigant's memory, which they're not lawyers. Maybe even with their best efforts, they're not properly relaying what they had been advised previously. So these were some of the issues that we were facing. In addition, we were also at the same time starting to need to find new ways to deal with like supervision and quality control. As we were getting busier, it wasn't as easy for supervisors to really know like what was going on with their staff with us helping so many people. And we wanted to make sure that we had a way to make sure that our advice was consistent, that no one was really going totally rogue, even if by accident. And so staff oversight was a bit of a problem because the supervisors are also super busy helping with these litigants as well. So we wanted to find a way to deal with all these issues. We also wanted to be more consistent as an organization. We help throughout the whole state of Maryland. And of course, different attorneys are going to give different advice, and often both times it's right, and that's fine. But we also wanted to maintain that our level of service and some of the basic things we were providing were as consistent as possible across the state. So we wanted to figure out how to do this without having these client files, without retaining too many notes, and without adding extra work. So that's where we came up with the related tab. And by we, I mean Russ came up with it. So continuity without creating cases. So we needed a way to have memory in these cases, but still maintain the brief advice guardrails. So we had to figure out how to not violate any ethical rules here. The ethical rules being that we can't be having maintaining any of these client files, not, entering into the territory of a attorney-client relationship that we just simply aren't supposed to have in brief advice. But we also needed something to not be starting from scratch anytime. So the Related tab is built into the app. Russ will show you screenshots of it in a bit. But some of the features there is that it links the prior consults based on the phone number that the person's calling from. So of course that's not flawless. People call from different phone numbers, or they might walk in and not give us their phone number, but it mostly works. It catches a lot of them. The notes are only visible during an active consult, meaning that if I am meeting with someone and I have the data entry pulled up that I'm going to be entering in, I can see the Related tab while that's open, but once I close it out, I can't be browsing my coworkers' notes. Also, at the end of each month, once we do our sort of data entry audit, we lock the system, so you can't even go back and look at your own notes from prior months. This protects the limited scope brief advice model, and it's available in a tab directly in the data entry app, and the oversight access is limited to supervisors. So that means that supervisors and above, or even, even higher than supervisors are the ones that are able to go in, and if needed, I can sort of edit some notes. So designing the Related tab, we started from a place of extreme caution. We were very nervous about this.
I was adamantly against it when we started, by the way.
It was and the judiciary was very hesitant too. It was a big change from what we were doing. We were, like I said, starting each consult from scratch, being very cautious about not retaining any client information. So we built this to address litigant expectations and staff efficiency. Our early concerns were about bias, confidentiality, and note quality. So we did do a testing group. We started with 11 staff attorneys and 14 supervisors. And during the testing period, it was just a month or a couple months of testing, and we did over 7,000 consults during that testing. So some of the concerns that we had is that sorry, I lost track of my mouse. I want to be able to scroll.
And while Lindsay's getting caught up here, one thing that we do that's really cool about the app is it's sort of role-based. So when we're designing new features, we can roll them out to just a few people or just supervisors or just attorneys and have people sort of test things and make sure it's working properly before it's integrated for everyone else in the application as well.
Yeah, so we were concerned that people would be reluctant to letting staff see their coworkers see their notes. We were concerned that the notes were going to create conflicts. We thought that people might accidentally leave a case number, some identifying information in the notes that were going to cause issues. And we also thought there might be a risk of bias. If I see these prior notes, I might make a judgment about the litigant before I even give them a chance to tell their story. So that's why we did this testing. And in these 7,400 consults, there was only one conflict that we identified. And it turned out, I'll talk more on the other slide, but the next slide, but the other issues weren't that much of an issue either. So then after the testing, we did a gradual organization-wide rollout to implement it to everyone. It happened pretty quickly though, but we did maybe 2 or 3 people at a time so we could train them on the process. And yeah, so this is further, I already talked about the notes, all these things. The internal ethics discussions. So yeah, it turned into a lot of what we had been concerned about. We had tried to sort of build into the technology and then learned a lot of that actually needed to happen through training. So originally we had planned to limit how far back you could see the prior notes because we were concerned about old notes before we implemented this, including information that shouldn't be in there. So basically we had always been entering these notes, but with the assumption that no one else was going to see them except for maybe a supervisor. We were worried if we implemented this and suddenly I could see, if someone else called and I could see all the prior notes, maybe there was something in there that someone wouldn't have put in there if they had known that someone else was going to see it, like a case number or something like that. But then after only seeing that one conflict, we were like, oh, we actually don't have to limit it. It can go, we can show the notes for all time. We also had originally had this flag system in place, kind of that bias thing I was talking about. We were worried that people were going to rely on this too heavily and just be looking at the related tab, making assumptions about what the litigant was going to say, making assumptions about who the litigant was or how they were going to treat them based on the attorney's prior notes. And so we wanted it to, I forget the exact number, but it was only going to be if there were like, we had some formula, like if they had contacted us like 2 times in the last week or like 5 times in the last month, there would be like a little tag on the related tab telling you to look at it. During the testing, we realized that that was pretty inefficient and there was no like direct formula for that. And so instead we switched pretty quickly and said, just look at it every time. And instead we trust our staff, we're gonna train them to not, to not think of it this way. Use it as a tool, don't use it as the only thing. And so we learned that training and oversight proved more effective than some of these time-based restrictions. You had to work with the tech's really important, but you also had to do training with the staff to figure out the best way to use these things. And then the other safeguard in place, or I guess I'll talk more about safety in here, but that, like Russ was saying, with the different like user skill levels and stuff or access levels, supervisors can go in and sort of like scrub any information that shouldn't have been left in there. I was just going
to say the design phase for this was really only a few weeks, and we were able to prototype different versions and see what was working and what didn't working, make changes really just on the fly. So it was really nice.
Sticking with the theme of being cautious, we intentionally built in extra redundancies for safety. So we do have a confidential flag. So, if I'm speaking with someone and I have a concern, for example, that maybe they're using a shared phone and I think that someone from the other side of the case might call in from the same phone, whether it's a domestic violence issue or otherwise, I can mark it as confidential, meaning that while the notes are still going to be in there for our data reporting purposes or any other quality control or anything like that, when a number is called from that phone number, or when that phone number calls again or that phone number signs in, the next attorney to look at that, it's not going to show up in the related tab. It'll be like it didn't happen at all. There's also a litigant safety question, both when they sign in at a walk-in, but also we ask them before we send them anything, is it safe to text you? In addition to other safety questions for high conflict case types, and honestly, these are questions we probably should have already been asking, but this is something that sort of pushed us to do it. When we were having these questions about, are we gonna have issues with having these prior notes showing up in this related tab? What are the safety concerns here?
A question in the app related to that, if you're good with it. It says, since you use the phone number as the tie for litigants and cases, do you require a text confirmation? And what if phone numbers changed or someone else has the phone number of a previous client?
So we don't check if the phone number changes. It's really only for specific interactions with that particular phone number. We don't have any other unique identifier in the system at all. And we do not check the phone number to sort of try to look up and see if it's this number the person who says it is. We don't do any of that sort of thing. But we do have the ability to mask out certain numbers, like let's say you're the House of Ruth and you have a dedicated line that just your people use to call just the help center. Well, we were able to easily identify that and sort of block it from the related tab altogether.
Yeah, and we aren't, so yeah, if phone numbers change, then, we're just not going to be seeing all those related tab notes from that phone number, and that's fine, that happens. This is, about as good as we've been able to get it. And yeah, we don't have any sort of like, they can opt into texting for other purposes, but for this, it's just something that's showing up on our screen. Like we're not, we'll talk a little bit more about texting later, but we're not like texting them anything through the related tab.
But for certain case types, we do earmark it as sort of not safe to text that particular person.
Yes.
So if it's like a DV case or something, we automatically just mark it by default.
Yeah, and we'll be overly cautious with that. So yeah, we did start then working in other safety questions. So anytime we have a family law or domestic violence consult or anything that sort of makes us feel a little concerned, we now have a standard set of safety questions like, do you feel that you're safe in your home? Do you feel safe in your relationship? Sort of standard safety questions. Plus, does anyone else have access to your phone? So we ask those two to then decide if we're going to check off that, should I mark this as confidential? So in sum, the related tab enables us to have shorter consults, less re-explaining, easier hotline to walk-in handoffs, earlier identification of overuse, and improved consistency across staff and state. And I'll talk a little bit more about those things as after Russ shows you what it looks like.
Cool. So this is the main sort of intake interface. I'm an admin, so this is the admin view. Staff attorneys will only see their past interactions, not everyone's. And so we have this little bar across the top. If you wanted to add a new interaction from scratch, we use the green button. If you are on a call with the litigant on the phone and you want to transfer the data from that into the system, you would use the orange button. And the blue one is the walk-in lobby queue, which we'll talk about mostly. The lobby walk-in queue is pretty cool because we can see however many litigants are waiting to be seen at any given time across the state in all of the self-help centers. And this is what it looks like once you've opened the, thank you, sorry. Opened the lobby queue. And one thing that we do a lot in this system is if it's something that we can speed something up for a user or make a click not happen, or if we can query something for them on their behalf, or and inside of their profile they can set up defaults like this is my home office, I do only walk-ins in such and such counties, so they can set those preferences up in the ahead of time, and then when they're entering and editing data, those fields are all set by default. So for example, here you can see that it's defaulted to the Baltimore City office when I opened it, so I'm only getting what I need to see right away without having to do any extra clicks or steps. Over here on the left-hand side, you can see the time and date that the user or litigant logged into the walk-in system. And this happens through kiosks in the lobbies of the courthouses. You can see their usually first initial and last name. Cool thing with language, you can register in several different languages, like Spanish, for example. And if you prefer to communicate in Spanish, even when we're texting you through our Twilio setup, if you only speak Spanish, you see the Spanish options only. You don't even see the English options because they're just sort of, press 1 for this, press 2 for that kind of vibe. And then on our side, the staff attorney can see the history of the chats in English, even if the user doesn't speak or communicate in that language, which is really cool. We can see what their general request is. Most of those are just checkboxes and things like that. There is a free text option, which I blurred out down there, so users can get pretty specific about what they're after. You can see exactly how long a particular litigant has been waiting. We do some triage. Most of the time it's a first come, first serve sort of situation, but if we have law clerks doing a specific thing or need them to collect information from a litigant on a certain case type, we may send them out ahead of time for something like that. The other cool thing about, you can text the litigant from here if you just hit the blue text button. Let's say they said it wasn't safe to text when they registered, the button would be yellow and they would automatically be opt out of any texting or surveying. Or if they don't have a phone number, it'll just have a red box saying, hey, they don't even have a phone number. And we implemented that during COVID because we were just having people register and then going back out to their vehicles and wait until they could be seen again. And then when it comes to, the other cool thing about the text message system is you have to register that day. If you've not registered or called into one of the self-help centers and you text the number, so let's say 3 days later, I try to send a text message to MCLA, it's just gonna say, you're not registered today, you have to either go to a walk-in center or call the phone system. So we try to manage their expectations as much as possible, especially with automated systems like this. When we click accept, it queries the database, make sure no one else has tried to accept it before you, and then puts it in your queue. You can also delete stuff from here, but it's all self-delete, so nothing's actually deleted. It just sort of goes out of the purview of the user. And so let's say I've accepted that interaction and I open it up. This is what it looks like. A lot of the fields are pre-default, filled by the things that the user entered into either the IVR or the walk-in system, or by the preferences set by the user. And then the third tab over there is the related tab, and it can vary from 0 to hundreds. And Lindsay will go on about the next ones.
Yeah, so we just have a few examples of what it looks like when you click on that related tab. So here on this slide, initial data and additional data, those are the two tabs where I'm entering my information. But yeah, then I can click on the related tab and see what else is happening. So we have 3 different examples to show you. This first one is, there are 4 prior notes here. These are all, these don't contain any personal information. These are fake, but based on real situations. So this is a good example of someone who is overusing our services, perhaps advice shopping. The oldest consult would be at the bottom, and then it gets newer towards the top. So you can see that there's a note in here that the person went to a walk-in, and they're a tenant. They were advised on their failure to pay rent judgment and filing an appeal, filing a motion to stay, and their right of redemption. And then the next day, they called in. They were asking the same things. They were advised on the same thing. They called again the next day. They were advised on the same thing. They called again a few days later and were advised on the same thing. This is something that we see a lot, and this is kind of one of the things that we had been hoping to use this for. It just helps you quickly identify that they're calling about the same thing. Say, oh, I see that we've advised you on this. Have you taken these steps? Do you have any new questions? If they do, great, you can get right to those new questions. If they're confused about something, good, you can clarify that. If not, you can just sort of reiterate, yeah, I agree with what my colleague advised, and then move on to the next call. Here's another good example of, here's 3 related tab interactions, a good phone to walk-in referral. So I had said we previously had no good way to do this. If someone called in and there was a reason that I then needed to send them to one of our walk-in office to meet with someone in person. So here, someone called in. It was a tenant. Their landlord filed for a breach of lease. The notice cited a specific provision in the lease, which is required for a breach of lease case, but the tenant was unable to locate that or read the section of that lease to the person on the phone, just kept asking if they'll win. So this is a situation where you really weren't able to get the information out of them over the phone and said, hey, I think you should go to the walk-in and bring a copy of your lease. The litigant tried to call the next day, asked the same thing, and they reiterated, we're going to need to take a look at the lease. You need to go to the walk-in. They go to the walk-in person is able to see these notes and immediately say, yeah, let me take a look at that lease and look at that section, and then give them their defense for the breach of lease. So this makes it really efficient, a lot easier. Or for example, if the client hadn't walked in with their lease, the attorney can say, well, I see you were advised to bring your lease. You're going to need to go back and get your lease and come back. So it just sort of helps for quicker handoff, cuts a lot of back and forth where the walk-in attorney doesn't have to get to the root of the problem. It's already been identified for them. Also, it helps that you can see the advocate name. So if they needed something else, they could Teams message that attorney and say, oh, I'm helping this person that you helped the other day. This isn't in the note, but do you remember this? And sometimes that can help as well. Here's the last example of a repeat caller, but they actually have different and unique issues. So this is something that it's been helpful for as well. This is someone, they're calling a bunch, but it's about expungement, it's about landlord-tenant, it's about family law, it's about small claim, it's about wage theft. And our phone system, our phone hotline that we use actually does show us call history. It shows us if someone has called us 1 million times, which can cause some unconscious bias. If you see a long call history, you assume, this person's just abusing our services. But that's not necessarily true. A lot of the populations that we help, they have, unfortunately, multiple legal issues going at once. So, our staff is great, and of course I'm not saying that that's automatically what they all think, but of course we all can deal with some fatigue in this work and some burnout. So this helps to dispel that myth too, and you might see a long call history and then you're like, oh, this person is calling us for legitimate reasons every time. They just have a lot of different things going on. So it's a
then
good
if-
reminder there too.
And if someone comes across a number that's a frequent number, but it's not the same person, then we just they just send it over and we add it to the frequent or like shared number queue or whatever, and then it doesn't show up in the system anymore.
Yep. So this is just a fun slide of what staff are saying. Some positive feedback from our staff about this, which affirms that in a lot of ways it's doing what we wanted it to do. I won't read all of these, but here's a good one. Shout out to AM. We use initials at work for outstanding related tab write-up that saved me 27 minutes with this litigant. This was a good unintended consequence. The one above that, unintended good consequence. Reading previous attorney's notes has clued me in on some creative and great ways to handle issues I did not yet have in my toolbox. And then I included that last one just because it's a little funny. That feeling when you went from a call with 0 in the related tab to one with 61 back to 0. So, we have people that call us all the time. We have people that call us for the first time.
And as the guy that's sort of helping streamline these processes for them, it's really great to know that like the things you work on are really making a difference, and it's helping with quality of life for people that are entering an insane amount of data on a daily basis.
Yeah, our staff think of Russ as like magic. He makes magic happen for us.
That's why I grew the beard, so I look more like a wizard.
So that's it for the related tab. Now we're going to switch to talking about this other tool, the link manager. So I'm going to talk a little bit about why we needed new tech again. We were seeing some access to justice issues. Like I had said, we have walk-in offices in 10 out of 24 of our counties. Other counties rely only on the remote services or if they're able to get to one of the walk-ins. But that meant that they left them without equal access to some of the actual internal documents we created. So there's court forms, of course, on the court website. But there's other things that we were creating internally that people contacting us remotely just weren't able to get access to. We had limitations in getting this stuff out due to our brief advice scope. So moving so fast and not having lasting client relationships, we're really not able to send litigants personalized emails with information or attachments. It's all pretty fast. We don't send PDFs. We're not having any sort of lengthy back and forth with them. And there was an inefficient and impractical use of time. The volume of litigants was too heavy to be dictating sample language to callers. And they're often on the go and unable to take notes. They're calling us from their car, they're calling us on the bus or while walking. So we might be telling them, this is what you need to write in your notice to vacate. And then they're calling us back later that day saying, someone told me what to write, but I wasn't able to write it down at the time. Or we were even, for years, we were reading URLs over the phone and telling them to write it down. Just incredibly inefficient and frustrating for us and for the litigants. And even with dictating stuff over the phone, it was kind of where to draw the line. I can't be writing this whole motion for you. And so that's where the link manager came into play. We have these staff-created templates, fillable PDFs where appropriate. We were able to make it more standardized statewide. And I had sort of reached out to Russ and said, we need a way to be sending these things, but we don't want to be sending individual emails. We don't really have the time for that. We don't want to be uploading PDFs. And like usual, he made magic happen, and it is another thing that lives inside that data entry app. To make it all very simple and usable for all of us.
Oh, this one's me. So initially we wanted to be able to send just emails, but I was like, we could maybe send both. And then we had to sort of streamline it into sort of either or, sort of on the fly, which was kind of fun. And so it's built directly into the app. Wherever there's a little purple messaging button whenever you need to start messaging the litigant, and it just opens up on the same screen you're on, and then you can sort of copy paste whatever you need to. And the cool thing is that there are no actual files live anywhere outside of the server. They're sort of encoded into a string format and sort of stored in the database. So we don't have to worry about file management or anything like that at that point. And doing it that way makes we can do some really cool things with the files later if we needed to. And we can track how many documents are being sent, where they're being sent to, how many people access certain things. So we can sort of travel through all of that in real time.
Yeah, like he came up with a solution that I hadn't even like thought of could work. You know, I was like, how are we going to send these things? And he's like, oh, I can build something in the app where you all can just upload your PDF and it'll create a public-facing link that doesn't like exist elsewhere that you can just send to them, and then they can click that link and access it that way. And it's just so quick and easy, and has allowed us to now, you know, before it was like, oh, we just want to send this sample language, and now it's kind of opened up this whole world of we're like, well, now, you know, we can create so many things. Like the court, when it doesn't have forms for certain things, we've now, JP sitting in the front row has made this template for filing a petition for mandamus to file with the DMV to get them to issue you a new title for your car. And so just things that we're getting calls about a lot, there's no court form for it, we've created it, and now we can send it statewide. So it's changed our whole practice, really.
Next screen. Okay. So not every litigant requires them to be sent anything, but during our 2025 sort of beta of this process, we sent over 71,000 different messages with multiple links and messages in each one. You'll see here that most litigants prefer to receive a text message over an email. So if you're building anything like this, make sure you're doing mobile first or SMS. And in our current template library, we have about 109 templates that we can send out, and everyone is using this daily within the system. And then next we'll do the quick demo. I think you have to click it, or I'll just play and I'll sort of talk over it. So this is I can't even see it. So this is the main scene. We'll talk about how we can upload different files. You just upload it, it shows up in the list. If you want to replace a file, it has to be a unique file since it's encoded in the database as that file. If you've made no changes to the file, it can easily recognize it as a duplicate. So you have to make sure if you're adding a new document so let's say a court form changes every year, like the expungement application or something like that, you can easily update the link and you don't have to resend those files to people. If they go back to that link over time, it'll be updated if we updated it for them. And then I can just copy and paste the links by clicking them and pasting them into the chat box here. And the other cool thing about this is the part where they read the PDFs and the messages we sent them aren't even on the same server as the app. We built a little embed code that we could embed on our regular website, and they all end up there because staff at MCLA didn't want litigants sort of poking around on the same server that the application was on. And then here we'll show an example of what the text messages look like and what the emails look like, pretty straightforward stuff. And that same phone number works the same way. They can't text it all the time. It just says, hey, this is an automated number. And this is what the preview looks like, just a typical PDF preview. Nothing too fancy. But it's really easy because there's no real permission issues. We go in later to some alternatives to this, that you could use without our system or whatever. But even sharing different things from SharePoint or Google or wherever, we always sort of run into permission issues. So having it this way is quite easy. You can go ahead to the next one.
So this is just like an example of a notice to vacate for a tenant or a landlord to give to a tenant that we drafted that we either would have to just read over the phone or we would send them to a walk-in, and now we're able to just text or email it to them. And it just sends them as a link. It's nothing they even have to download. They can just open the link, and if they want to print it out or just use this to then write their own, whatever works. It's made it really easy. So what litigants have told us. So these are some quotes from our litigants when we were doing some post-consult surveys related directly to this. And this was another thing, I didn't include this before, where we had heard from litigants a lot. Like, can't you just email it to me? Can't you text it to me? And we were always like, yeah, we wish we could. But we couldn't, but now we can. So yeah, it was great that everything I requested help with was emailed directly to me. Having information emailed me was extremely helpful. I appreciate they were able to text me the information. And of course, we're not just texting and emailing links. We are also able to just text and email written stuff in the body of something too, if there's no link needed.
And so some alternatives to this, you could set something similar up on SharePoint or your OneDrive or Google Drive and hope that the permission issues don't exist for you. You just create some libraries. Also, alternatively, you could use WordPress or Drupal, especially if it's public-facing information, and you could probably accomplish the same task. It wouldn't be built in like ours, but you could definitely accomplish the same task with either SharePoint, Google, or WordPress or Drupal or any sort of platform of your choice. Or since it's 2026, you could obviously vibe code your own if you want to.
All right, so our key takeaways that we hope you get from this is that brief advice still needs memory. Starting from 0 each consult is not sustainable at scale. And let the needs of the staff on the ground drive your innovation. So don't be too blinded by the shiny new tech. You'll notice we didn't talk about AI in this presentation. Russ does a lot of cool stuff with AI. You'll hear about it tomorrow. But it's not the only thing. So listen to what your staff and those that you serve need and start from there. So you might build something really cool, but if it doesn't make the job easier or more efficient or help with the goals of the program, then it's just really a waste of everyone's time. And get feedback and be adaptable. Russ is really amazing throughout all of these things. I can, like he said, we have check-ins, but also as we're sort of in the testing process of things, if we find out something's not working or we want to do something differently, just send him a message, and he's always very open to working with us and wanting to make everything easier and work better for everyone.
I always tell everyone that MCLA is my favorite project because the volume of the work that we do there and just the immediate assistance that people are getting without all of the reporting requirements that come with like an LSC is just next level.
And this is being recorded, so that's on the record now.
Sorry, LSC. But the other cool thing that we really haven't brought up yet is our executive team really is sort of mandated, because we do a lot of internal sort of software development and really cool projects. And over the last couple of years, our new executive team is basically, if you're developing it, it needs to be open source at this point. So hopefully in the next year or so, we'll have an open source version of this if you wanted to start running your own self-help center. We'll see.
There's a couple of questions in the chat, if I may.
Yeah, of course.
Okay,
Go for it.
one is this app available for others to use / replicable for other organizations?
Like I said, that's something that we're thinking about. We haven't really run it past the executive team about making an open source version of this. However, they've mandated that, so this falls into that category.
So yeah, not right now, but we hope eventually. Because what Russ has built would be, I think, a game changer for any sort of like brief advice help center model.
Okay, and the second one was whether you develop these tools in-house. And if so, is the code available to other programs? So it's similar.
It's completely in-house. And honestly, I don't think I would be that upset about sharing the current code that we have. It's been growing, sort of sprawling for a decade, so it's probably not as well organized as I would like it to be. But if there was a developer out there that wanted something like this, I'd be happy to share at least what I've learned and a good place to start for sure.
I switched to this slide so you can see Russ's email, so you can bother him for that code, whoever asked that.
Please do.
Good afternoon. My name is Brandon Gary. I'm a supervising attorney with the Brief Services and Legal Advice Helpline with Community Legal Services. There's a lot of overlap, in between what you were talking about and what we do. I might have missed it, but what were some of the limitations you had with delivering those brief services, prior to the app? Because, the way we're set up, we take the call, we give the advice, we can email any documents afterwards. So what restraints were you working with?
Well, we didn't have any way to be emailing documents. We were just sort of growing so fastly, and we were so quickly and so high volume that we weren't following up. We weren't emailing anything after. It just wasn't part of our model. So we had that constraint. We had to be just telling them about publicly available things or sending them to one of our walk-in offices to pick up things in person. So before this, that was one of the constraints. And I think that's the main thing, just sort of keeping up with the demand and
Well-
finding ways to still make this work.
Yeah, and then one big issue is billing. Like, we bill the judiciary each quarter a lot of money basically for this app. And before we had the app to track our time and things like that, we had several people sort of sporadically between grants and compliance and finance and other people that were sort of each month pooling together what we thought the bill might be. So, and now it's a button, so it's a lot easier.
Yeah, we use the app too for our like data reporting. We have monthly data reporting that's required, and we were having to pull it from all different places and put it together. And now it's all kind of like cleanly built a report for us.
We do have a few places that
Yeah.
where we have data that doesn't live in the app, but mostly the call center data
Yeah.
and the chat data sometimes.
And then is the process overall pretty contemporaneous between the advice and then whatever B service is going to follow up?
Oh yeah, we like send the text and the email either while on the call or immediately afterwards. And we only, I should have mentioned this, we have, at least with the phones, it's a 90-second work break, so just 90 seconds in between calls. So that was another thing going on with us. You don't really have much time. That's how much time you have to enter your data and to sort of wrap these things up. So we needed it to sort of be quick and easy to do while still on the call or immediately after.
And when it comes to the surveys, actually, two ITCs ago, they were like, you have to do automatic surveys. I'm like, Lindsay, we got to do automatic surveys. And so we sort of started doing that. And then something I always wanted to do because there's no real sort of metric of how well we've done or anything. So once we started doing the surveys and they started rolling in, it's like almost 5 stars across the board from everyone. So it was like, yes.
We did get we got some complaints in there though.
A little
Don't oversell
But it was a lot of positive feedback. Like for me, every time I was sort of sad about something, I would just go look at the survey results and be like, oh, people love us.
Like I said, there's a lot of overlap because I constantly tell our attorneys to do the same thing. Every time you feel like you're not doing anything, go listen to the surveys and let them tell you.
Definitely.
And they're going to tell you a whole different story. So like I said, there's a lot of overlap. I'm very interested to talk to you all later. I'll get
Definitely.
your contact information because we speak the same language.
Yeah, for sure.
I was just curious how you think this could work in like a similar fashion for like an LSC funded legal aid program where you have to like, take the client info and some of the stuff that you've been able to get around in your.
Well, I don't know that I'm super equipped to handle that, but one thought I do have is we have talked a bit about, since Legal Aid is our parent organization, we don't currently have like a super great way of giving referrals to them because of course what we do is give referrals. So one thing we are talking about with Russ is a way for us to they use Legal Server for us to be able to sort of create a direct referral from the app into Legal Server, so that then we've done sort of this warm referral based on the basic information that we think it fits the criteria, and then from there, then the legal aid attorney or paralegal or whomever can get the additional information that they would need to do that full intake.
Yeah, the system's definitely not designed to be like a fully functioning LSC-funded, workflow for like data collection, not like a legal server or a best per case or any of those other applications.
Right. I mean, the numbers are very impressive, 180,000 cases. And then I also like the idea for like counting matters of like the link manager and being able to like integrate that into some kind of like legal services, like triage system.
Yeah.
Seems really interesting to me.
Cool.
Well,
I don't
open
know.
to talking more about it.
Yeah, that would be great. Thank you.
There was one more question over first queue and then the red. Hold on.
This huge spotlight's actually great because I can't see any of you, so it feels like I'm by myself up here.
And no, I don't think I'm going to be able to see it all after this.
I had a question. I wondered what kind of resources or database you all use to keep track of the brief advice that you're going to give. Like, do you have things written out on certain topics? And then, who writes that and how do you keep it updated?
Yeah, so we do. We have an internal knowledge base. It's called Flowlu. It's provided to us by the Maryland courts, but then we maintain it. And we actually started it, I think it was like during COVID is when we were able to get a lot of that information down. Prior to that, we were just sort of, like when I started, it was like, here's some outlines we've created, here's a binder with some material, and you're just sort of learning as you go. Now we do have this good internal knowledge base. During COVID, when things were a little slower, all the walk-ins were working from home with us. We were able to really build up this knowledge base, and we have articles on kind of everything that we advise on, with links to things. We have a training manager that's in charge of maintaining that, and he does a really great job of sort of staying on top of that, and then of course dedicating staff and law clerks and stuff to helping with those updates. And then otherwise, I mean, it's just learning from each other. I mean, we have a good onboarding process. We have staff that are involved in training new people. A big part of the training is reviewing that knowledge base, but then also shadowing people, being shadowed while you're taking the calls. And, you know, even though we're like a 67-person organization now spread out across the state, we're in multiple Teams chats, but we do have an organization-wide Teams chat that we're using literally all day, every day, since we're helping someone live. And so it'll be, hey, I'm meeting with this tenant right now, and this is going on. Can you help me with this? And so that's kind of how we're also learning. Just we're watching that chat all day, and we're learning from each other, and we're helping each other. So yeah, it's a lot of information to stay on top of. We do have that knowledge base, and one person sort of dedicated with making sure that it's updated, but you know, helping each other as we go too.
Hi, so I'm from Kansas, and we're a LSC funded program, but have a lot of other different projects that we have. So we have an advice line attorney unit that takes calls all day, every day, and implements some of the things that you have highlighted today. We send the email follow-up straight out of our case management system after the call. If people want it by text, we can send it by text, those kinds of things. So even if you are under the umbrella of LSC and all their rules, there's ways to implement different things that you guys are doing into your organization, some of those little kind of fast tips and things. You may have said this, and I might have missed it. So you have people meeting live at courthouse help centers, and then you're doing telephone calls. Do you do any video meetings?
We have some video meetings, but they're all also like in the courthouses. It's like a computer kiosk at a courthouse that doesn't have a walk-in center. So like in the law library or something, someone can video chat from there. Okay. Those are our lowest volume, I would say, because most of the time that could just, what they're video chatting about can just be accomplished through a phone call.
And then you talked about the kind of 90-second wrap-up period.
Yeah.
So your staff is logging into the app. Are they taking those calls one after another? And is there a time limit on those calls? Or if you've got a talker, are you going an hour and a half and that just happens sometimes?
There's no official time limit on the calls. We set a goal of your average should be 10 minutes. But we don't actually mean like each call should be 10 minutes. That's, you know, of course, including that some of your calls are going to be 2 minutes because someone asked you what's the address of the courthouse. And some are going to be over an hour because it's going to be, you're going to have an interpreter talking about multiple issues. Where we've discussed time limits because we're not, even with all these, you know, consults, we're not hitting everyone. There's a lot of people still not getting through. But no, we don't have hard time limits. But we do, I mean, we're out always monitoring things, and if we see, you know, we have some staff that sometimes they talk a little too long, we'll nudge them, say, hey, what's going on this call? I see it's going on for a while. We have a lot of people waiting in the queue. But, you know, people keep it as efficient as possible mostly. Oh, yeah. Oh, yeah, we can do it. We can do it through the system, but we mostly do it on Teams chat. So we use Cisco WebEx as our phone system. So people log in, for the phones, people log into that, and they log into the app every morning. Those are like the two things that they have going. All right, looks like we're out of time. But Russ and I are happy to sit up here and answer any questions that anyone has.
Survey tab.
Oh,
Fill out the survey.
yeah, fill out the survey, and thank you all so much for joining us.
Yay.